Hi everybody, I'm Bonnie Barker with Bonnie Bay Crochet, and today I want to show you something really fun, whether you're a beginner or an intermediate or an advanced crocheter. I'm calling this the Easy Beginners Granny Square Scarf or Shawl. And depending on how many rows you decide to crochet, you can make a nice, lovely shawl, or you can make this into a scarf. And what's really fun about this project is you don't have to run out and buy any special yarn if you don't want to. You can use yarn that's already in your stash, and this is a fabulous stash buster. Okay, let me show you. This is using a number 5 weight yarn, but I had some sock yarn in my stash and I made a nice, beautiful scarf. This is all of these yarns that I'm showing you are self-striping, and just yarns that I had waiting and just begging for a project for many months. Okay, here is another. That was a lot of fun to work up, and again, self-striping yarn. And maybe you have some of these and more in your stash already. So this is the time to get them out. All you need to do if you use yarn that's different from what I'm going to show you in the demonstration is just make sure that you have the hook size that is appropriate to the yarn that you use. Well, come on, let me show you what you're going to need. But before we do that, if you could please hit that subscribe button, especially if you're a first-time viewer, and the thumbs up always blesses me, and hit that notification bell if you want to hear about more projects that I have coming your way. For this project, I'm going to be using 1 cake of Yarnspirations Caron latte cakes. And let me give you the stats on this yarn right here. It's a bulky weight, or number 5 right here. And this is 50% acrylic, 42% nylon. The yardage on this particular cake is 530 yards or 485 meters. I'm only going to use one for this project, but if you wanted a longer, wider shawl, feel free to add an additional cake to that. Now, if you wanted to use a different yarn, you can use any weight yarn for this project. Just be sure that you size up the crochet hook appropriately. Also for this project, using the Caron Cakes yarn, I'm going to be using a size K or 10.5 or 6.50 millimeter crochet hook. And as always, I highly recommend you have a needle, a yarn needle handy, and a pair of sharp scissors. Well, let's go ahead and begin. Okay, to begin, we're going to go ahead and start with a slip knot, which we're going to work this very slowly for you in case there are some true beginners out there. And we go ahead and pull the little tail and tighten up this knot a little bit. Now, before I go any further, let me just say that if you're an absolute beginner and have never crocheted before, look in the video description below. I have some excellent beginning tutorials that I recommend that you watch before you start this project. Okay, so now we're going to chain 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we're going to work a slip stitch in the first stitch of the chain so that we can form a small circle. And the way we do this is we stick the hook in, pull the loop through, and pull the loop through without wrapping. And you should have formed a little Cheerio or a little donut here. We're going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3, and we're going to working into that big hole, the center of the little donut seed there. We're going to work 2 double crochets. Let me back that up a little bit. So to make a double crochet, wrap the hook, stick it into the middle of this circle, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. And that's basically the stitch that we're going to be working throughout this entire project. Yarn over, insert, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Now in this case, let me slow down here. The chain 3 is actually an imitation double crochet. It has the same height as the double crochets, and from a distance it pretty much looks the same. So we're going to make this our acting double crochet, and in a lot of crochet patterns the chain threes are often counted as double crochet. So just I throw that out there to you. So you want to be careful if you're really into big stitch counts and everything, that you watch the pattern requirements there. Okay, now we're going to chain 2, 1, 2, and we're going to do 3 double crochets worked into that same circle, right into the middle. 1, 2, I'm just doing double crochets here, and 3. Okay, so this is row 1. That is completed. That's the fastest row of this project. From this point on, each row is just going to get longer as we go. And let me say one more thing before I go any further. If I am crocheting too quickly for you, I have a solution. If you look down along the bottom of the screen here, there's a little gear-shaped icon. If you click on that, it will bring up a playback speed, and you can select a slower speed. It's going to be on this side for the left-hand version of this video. Now, up in the upper right-hand corner, if you're watching from a cell phone, you'll see 3 vertical dots. If you click on that, it's going to be on this side for the left-handed version. If you click on those 3 dots, it's going to bring up also a playback speed, and you can change the speed. You can make it slower so that you can really understand me, or you can click a faster speed and speed me up if that keeps you from getting too bored. So I hope that serves you well. Round 2, we're going to actually let's go ahead and turn first, and then we're going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3. So after we've chained 3, we're going to work 2 double crochets into the first stitch. I know it's a little tricky to see with all this fuzzy yarn, but I think if you just look right here, and you see where there's like a V here at the top of each stitch, we're just putting it under both strands of that V, and we're going to do 2 double crochets. And again, the reason we do 2 double crochets is because this chain actually acts as a 3rd double crochet. Then we're going to chain 1, and now we're going to work in the chain 2 space here. This is actually the corner, and we're going to work a corner, which consists of 3 double crochets just worked right in that big open space there. Chain 2, 1, 2, and then 3 more double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. Let's pause. After that, we do a chain 1, and then now we have the first stitches that we worked. We're going to work right in this chain 3 space, and we're going to work 3 double crochets. 1, 2, 3. Okay, let's go ahead and stop and see what we have. So even at this point, you should be able to see a pretty well-defined triangle. And this is what we're going to just continue to grow throughout this entire project. So we're going to chain, let's go ahead and turn, chain 3, 1, 2, 3. And just like we did the last row, we're going to work 2 double crochets working under that, those 2 loops of that first stitch. 1, 2, and I know this is redundant, but just for the sake of learning, the reason we only do 2 is because this chain acts as an additional stitch. Chain 1, and now this is where the real pattern begins. In between every chain 1 space throughout this project, you're going to work 3 double crochets. This is those 3 clusters that are very common to the granny square style projects. Okay, after that we chain 1. Now whenever you get to this corner, make sure that you're paying attention that when you work around this project, that when you get to this corner where there are those 2 sets of clusters, go ahead and do another corner, make another corner which is 3 double crochets, chain 2, not 1, but chain 2 for the corner, and then 3 more double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. Let's pause and take a look at that. Okay, so chain 1's in between these, but when you get to that corner, make sure you do a chain 2. And then we're back to chain 1 and 3 double crochets worked in that next chain 1 space. One thing I like about this type of pattern is you don't have to worry about working in through the top loops very much at all, and that makes it much more beginner friendly in my personal opinion. Okay, so now we're going to chain 1, and now we get to the other end and worked right in that chain 3 space. We're going to work another cluster of 3 double crochets. 2, 3. And I know you can't feel this yarn, but this feels amazing. This is so much softer than it probably looks. First time using this yarn, but I'm really enjoying the journey so far. So let's go ahead and turn. Now this is going to be starting row 4, chain 3, and just like we've done in the other rows, 2 double crochets worked in those top 2 strands. You see that? Just like we've already done. Chain 1 and 3 double crochets worked in that chain 1 space, and again chain 1 and then 3 double crochets worked in that next chain 1 space, chain 1, and now we've come to the corner. And you know, one thing you can do, especially as this project gets larger and larger and larger, it'd be really easy to make a mistake here. And the reason I tell you this is I have done this mistake many times working granny squares. Well, I'll get to the corner and I'll only do 3 stitches. What you can do to remind yourself is use a little stitch marker, something like this. And if you don't have that, they have some other types that are like this. And you know what? And if you don't have a fancy little stitch marker, if you have a safety pin, safety pins work. And if you don't even have to have a safety pin, use a piece of yarn that's a contrasting color and just tie a little reminder there, kind of like tying a bow around your finger, so that when you get to that point, I'm going to, that tells you that, okay, you need to do something different here. So now that I'll just remove it when I get to that point. And I'll go ahead and do my something different, which is the corner, which in this case is going to be 3 double crochets. Remember, chain 2 for the corner, and then 3 more double crochets. 2, 3, and then as a reminder, I'm going to put this right back in that space, just so that when I come around the next row, that I don't forget to put this corner in the corner. Chain 1, and now we just work 3 double crochets in the next chain 1 space. Chain 1. Let's get some more yarn pulled off the scan for us. 3 more double crochets in that next space. Chain 1, and this is the last stitch, so we just work those 3 double crochets in that chain 1 space. 1, 2, 3. Sorry about the noise, my little stitch marker there is hitting the camera. Okay, so now this is what we have after 4 rows. Isn't that nice? This is going to be so much fun to work. Now I'm going to do one more row with you, and you're going to essentially do what I've just shown you throughout the entire project until you run out of yarn, or until you make the shawl or the scarf as large as you would like it to be. Chain 3. I'm going to do 2 double crochets in that first stitch. Again, this is the only time that you really work inside the actual stitches. Most of this is going to be working in the chain 1 spaces. Okay, chain 1, 3 double crochets in that next space, 2, 3, chain 1, and then 3 double crochets in the next chain. And you'll notice that with each row we're going to be adding 2 clusters to the row. So these rows are going to grow kind of rapidly at first. Chain 1, and then the next chain 1 space, 3 more double crochets. This yarn is so smooth, it really does make crocheting easy. Chain 1. Now we've come to our stitch marker. I'm going to go ahead and remove that. And you know what the stitch marker means? It means that we've come to our corner. So we work 3 double crochets. 1, 2, 3, chain 2, and then 3 more double crochets. 1, 2, 3, chain 1, then working in the chain 1 spaces again. 3 double crochets. Let's get some more yarn. I think this yarn's going to feel pretty amazing, but that said, feel free to use any yarn and just make sure you put the correct crochet hook to the size yarn. Okay, chain 1 and double crochet, 3 double crochets in the next chain 1 space. 1, 2, 3, chain 1, 3 double crochets in that next space, and then we get to the last stitches of the row. Chain 1, and in the last stitches we just do 3 double crochets. Okay, let's take a look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's after 5 rows. This is a fast grower. Okay, so now what I'm going to suggest you do is just continue working in the same pattern stitch until you reach the size that you would like your shawl or your scarf to be. And I'm going to work several more of these rows. I'm going to be working on this for a while, then I'll show you my progress as I come along. I've continued working this for several rounds, and I just wanted you to see how beautiful this is looking. And this self-striping yarn is a lot of fun to watch as each row unfolds. So I just wanted to go ahead and show you, and the edging is very straight. So this is really, really a fun project. So I'm going to go ahead and continue this until I just about use up all of my yarn, and then I'll show you what I have. Okay, I've come to the end of my 33rd row, and this is all the yarn that I have left, and I am pretty sure that that's not enough for another row. So I'm going to go ahead and fasten it off with the chain and going to give that a tug. And you know what? I'm going to do that 2 times on this yarn because it has a slippery quality to it. And since this yarn, go ahead and clip that there. Since this yarn is very fuzzy and it's going to be very easy to hide that, I feel comfortable making 2 chains just to add a little bit of security. I'm going to give you a really quick tutorial here on how to hide this loose thread. Okay, so we're going to just thread it into our yarn needle. And I highly recommend that you have some of these in your supplies because these are absolutely wonderful. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to, and it really doesn't matter where you hide this because this project is completely reversible. So I'm going to just hide this into the stitches. I'm just kind of winding it down a little bit this direction. There we go. And I'm going to run it underneath the gray colored yarn, just like that. And since I want to stay within the gray color yarn, I'm going to go up into the next stitch. And I'm going to do a little more. I'm just going to weave it down into the next cluster. You see what I did there? I just wove it kind of up in around that chain and down and around. Nobody's ever going to see this, especially with the fuzziness of this yarn. Now, if you're using a yarn that's all one color, you can just go down into the stitches. You don't have to do what I just did there. But I just like to give it a little extra added assurance. Okay, and then I pull back a little bit just to make sure that that stitch is not, or that the strand is not real tight. And then very carefully, I'm going to cut the stitch. Cut the strand rather. And careful not to cut the stitch or your work there. So that ends this project. Let me go ahead. I'm going to give you a quick little view here, and then I'll show you what it looks like in just a second. Now I have one other strand to hide, and that was the very beginning strand, and that is it. So once I hide that, I will be done with this project and give you an idea how these colors came out so beautifully. And as I mentioned before, you can use any size yarn for this project, and you can make as many or as few rounds as you'd like. You can use real skinny yarn like sock yarn, or weight number 1 or 2 or 3 DK weight yarn, or you can use your regular acrylics that you find in your big box stores, and even some bulky yarn like I used here. This is like I said, a number 5 weight yarn, and it crochets at more like a number 4, like a thick 4. But very, very fun to work with. Well, I hope you enjoyed making this project with me today. If you did, please hit that thumbs up. That would really bless me. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. God bless you all. Bye-bye.